Welcome one, welcome all. This is Unnecessary Ramblin', and we are talking about today's video game news and happenings. What's going on around the world of the video games. Hope you are ready to dive in and discuss interesting little day that we've had so far in the world of games. And this is actually the first story that we're going to talk about. Kind of took place yesterday, later in the evening, so this is in regards to Xbox's revenue. That they had their full, annual earnings report, and there's some good details in here. So overall, Xbox brought in $23.5 billion in 2025, which is a lifetime record for Xbox. Their overall revenue is up over 10% year over year when compared to last year, and they have grown from around $9 billion earned in 2014 to $23.5 billion earned in 2025, more than, doubling their reported revenue there. But also, at the same time, much more than doubling their headcount and an overall, studio portfolio. I think they had just under 10 studios in 2014, and now they're around 40 or so. And you'll see a couple notable spikes in this chart here, where in their revenue chart for the each fiscal year. So in fiscal year 21, they shot up from 11 billion to 15 billion, and that would be the year they acquired Bethesda. And then in fiscal year 24, that's the year the Activision deal finally went through, I believe. And and then they shot up from 15 billion to 21 billion that year. So, but regardless, that's why you buy those companies, to see more revenue coming in, obviously. So, good numbers there. 500 million monthly active users. But once again, factoring in that also includes King into that mix, which is, how many hundreds of millions of people are playing Candy Crush? So that's a large number factored in there. So you see that the monthly active users shot up by, I think it was around 200, and now it's around 500. So that's a big portion of that spike. And then their networks and services is up by around 16%. Very strong there. I think subscriptions are going to kind of see a continual rise as people are just struggling financially. And then, we're just struggling to make ends meet. It just kind of makes sense to stop buying as many individual products and just have a $15, $20 monthly subscription that you're relying on for your gaming or for your entertainment needs. So that makes a lot of sense there. And overall, really good stats across the board, other than the hardware, which, hardware's dropped by 22%. And it really is wild how, you just look at how desirable it is to have a sought after console, where PlayStation, so Xbox, they brought in 23.5 in revenue, and PlayStation brought in around 30 billion in revenue. And it's kind of crazy because PlayStation is much, much smaller. And if we're being honest, PlayStation is not making nearly as many video games as Xbox, and they're not putting out nearly as many high quality games, and they're just not putting out as many games in general as Xbox. So it is wild just to see how, if you have a console that is sought after and 70 million people are on it, and they're buying Fortnite skins, and they're buying Call of Duty skins, and they're buying, all of these different VC packs on 2K, when they're buying it on your platform, you're making a whole hell of a lot of money. It is just, once again, it's, I hate to go back to this, but it is it's something that I think about all the time in terms of that, the potential of PlayStation going third party or going more in a third party direction or focusing more on multi-platform relations. It's like, damn, you got a good thing going over there. It's like one of those fork in the road moments where it's like, oh yeah, now you can play all of this stuff anywhere. So are people gonna look at, as you're seeing the Game Pass, the rise of Game Pass, and you're seeing, the amount of high quality games over there? It's like, I do wonder. It's like, are people gonna have that realization moment next generation where it's like, oh well, if we can play our PlayStation games on Xbox, we're just gonna get this badass Game Pass subscription and we're gonna call it a day with PlayStation hardware. I mean, I know I'll do that without a doubt. And I was talking to the homie Dan All in the comments about this, and he was like, well, what about physical support? Because Xbox probably isn't going to have physical support, and PlayStation probably will. And I was like, well, you look at PlayStation, the PS5 Pro, and it's like, how much physical support are they really offering? That's a DRM machine just as well as the Series X is, with the initial internet connection to boot the console up. And so it's like, I don't like that either. That's why I don't collect physical media for the Series X. Now, if you put me in a situation where I'm boxed in and it's like, okay, the Series Y doesn't have physical media whatsoever, it's just a digital media machine, and the PS6 has physical media, but it is through a detachable disk drive and it is DRM dependent, like, I guess I still will go that route because I do still want to have something that I can sell and lend to a friend. Like, that is valuable to me, but I don't know. Even I kind of start thinking about that equation where it's like, I could kind of just say fuck the physical media side of things and just play Game Pass and save a whole lot of fucking money if you're not going to actually support tangible physical media that I can own and feel kind of secure about that purchase. But yeah, I do. I waffle a little bit on that because I still want to own something that I can resell. And yeah, it's just it's just crazy because you look at the PlayStation portfolio of games and it's like, what do you guys really have? When thinking about going in this more multi-platform direction, what do y'all have? Like, you don't have a Call of Duty, you don't have a Minecraft, you don't have a Fallout, an Elder Scrolls, a Diablo, an Overwatch. Like, you can't expect to make this type of money that Xbox is making. You don't have the games like that. You have these really, really high quality narrative rich experiences that people buy into your ecosystem for, and then they spend a whole bunch of money on Fortnite and 2K, but like, you don't own the Fortnites or the 2Ks where people spend all the money. You own the, 20, 25, 30 million copies sold for some of these games, but we're not talking Skyrim. You don't own a Skyrim. It's just, yeah, it's fascinating times, man. Fascinating times. And I hate to continue belaboring this point and the redundancy I'm sure is annoying at times, but I'm just so curious by this because I love console gaming so much. I've never seen anything like this, and it kind of throws a wrench into everything that I've grown up with. I'm like, what? Wait, what are we doing? What are we doing here? I feel like one of the Biden memes. What are we doing here? Come on, man. I feel like an old man waking up, and I'm like, what the fuck is going on? I'm looking around, and everything's changing. I woke up one night I woke up one morning and everything immediately changed. I don't like it. I'm on the defensive a little bit, but at the same time, I'm so just fascinated by all of it because change is inherently interesting. But at the same time, I'm becoming an old man and I don't really like change. But I still got enough youthful spirit to where I'm excited to see new things happen. Let's see. Game Pass annual revenue is at $5 billion. So I assume that means they're still right around, 30 million subscribers or so. Maybe a bit more depending on the price per person monthly. Could be close to, maybe 35 million, maybe 40 million. Like if the average payment is around $10 per person, but that would seem a little bit low. I don't know. You do have the people who have been locked in with the promotional deals or who grabbed one of those crazy discounts back in the day and they're still somehow riding off that. But regardless, still probably 60% short of their 100 million target goal. But listen, if they hit 50 million subscribers opposed to 100 million subscribers, but they're all paying $30 a month on average, opposed to the 100 million paying 15, like I guess the numbers kind of, you get to that same end goal just with different metrics. And you would think that should probably be sufficient, but I don't know, probably not at the same time, because that's how we work. That's how normal people think, where we're like, oh, well, we start up a lawn care business, and we're like, okay, well, if we go in and we can hit 40 jobs a week at $100 per lawn that we cut, we should be able to make a sustainable living off that. We're not thinking fucking, okay, well, 10 years down the line, we're going to jack up our prices to this amount, and so we need to be consistently raising prices, and also we need new subscribers, we need new lawns to cut, and we also need to be raising our prices simultaneously and gouging the shit out of our customers. That's not how normal people think, but that is how corporations think. So I assume that $100 million goal also had in that calculation for getting 100 million subscribers. I feel that they probably had in that calculation as well that they wanted to have those 100 million subscribers consistently paying more and more money over time, which, we are doing as subscribers to Game Pass. We're consistently paying more and more money over time, but the subscriber count just isn't growing anywhere near, that $100 million or that 100 million subscriber goal. Let's see. Dun, 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 dun. Yeah, I guess that's pretty much everything there. Decent numbers across the board. It is unfortunate. 2,000 employees laid off right before they're like, hey, we're as successful as we've ever been. We're doing great over here. And say, oh, tell that to the damn 2,000 people that lost their fucking jobs. But once again, that is the world of corporate business. You know what I mean? It's shit can be going great, but shareholders want shit to be going even better. So it's unfortunate, but yeah, I think those are just good numbers across the board. Really solid numbers from Xbox. And next up here, I have a interview from the CEO of PullUP, which is the owner of Focus Home. He did an interview with Christopher Dring from the Game Business Show. His name is Geoffrey Sardin. And there's a lot of info I want to dive into here. Sardin was talking about like how there's a clear industry split between AAA, where games are struggling much more than in the AA and indie space. And then I did appreciate this. Chris Dring kind of pushed back a little bit on that idea, saying, there's success and failure in both sectors. But the Sardin's point still stands, where he's like, no doubt, it is much less painful when you take a $2 million loss on a game opposed to taking a $200 million loss on a game. But once again, perspective is a motherfucker, because if I were to take a $50,000 loss on a game or on anything, I'm fucking hopping in the bathtub with a toaster. Whereas if, just using Microsoft as an example, as we just spoke about them, if they took a $100 million loss, like theoretically, that loss is a fucking, that's a write-off to them. That's something that they sweep under the rug. They don't even notice that. That's loose change to Microsoft. But, it's, I guess that's in a perfect world how it should be. I guess that's not actually how it is, because as we see, layoffs happen in an abundance, and it's unfortunate. So yeah, it is, I agree with Sardin's point where it's like, yeah, we are going to take these kind of smaller bets and not have to worry about fucking going bankrupt, hopefully, as long as we're not, placing $200 million on a game, placing all our hopes on this one individual product that has to appeal to everyone. And, he kind of went on to say that they're targeting a niche audience, and they're making these they're making these games for a slightly lower budget. And he makes a brilliant point where he said, specifically, the quote was, we don't make games for everyone, we just make games for someone. And that's the quote that got a lot of buzz, that generated a lot of headlines. And I love that quote. That idea of, you look at their portfolio and you look at Space Marine 2, and that is a game for Gears of War 360 type fans. That's a game for, obviously, your Warhammer fans, but that's a niche. And he was saying that, he was like, we never expected to hit 7 million fucking copies sold, or 7 million players of Space Marine 2. We just made a game for someone. We made a game for people who missed the days of the linear third-person Gears of War styled bro shooters. We made a game for people who want a, kind of bigger budget Warhammer third-person action-adventure game. And it goes on to do incredibly well by making just a game for someone. And you look at like Chants of Sennaar, Ninja Gaiden Ragebound, Plague Tale, Evil West, the Mud Runner games. Like, he's also trying to push a little bit more into the sim space with their train sim games. And so he's just focusing on greenlighting projects that are, greenlighting these projects that are appealing to somebody, but maybe not everybody. I think Banishers, Ghost of New Eden, which is under the Focus umbrella, which obviously I think I mentioned that PullUP owns Focus, and a couple Dotemu and a couple different labels. But, Banishers might be the closest thing in their portfolio to something that is trying to appeal to everyone. This sort of God of War identifier. You look at God of War and you're like, yeah, that's a mass market product. You look at Banishers and you're like, that has the tinges of a mass market product, like a Vampire, something of that realm. And I actually like that Don't Nod was going in that direction. I think that's where they're best, is making these, third person, choice-based action RPGs, or choice-based action adventure games, whatever the fuck you want to call them. So I do hope that they get another chance to take those swings. But even then, it's not like Banishers was, it's not like a super, super appealing aesthetic, or it's not a super appealing time period. Like, there's definitely more niche kind of targeted themes going on with Banishers as well. And Plague Tale, I definitely think fits a little bit more into that wheelhouse of what he's talking about, of making these curated experiences, with it being a stealth-driven experience and extremely, extremely narrative, front-facing. And yeah, and I don't think mainstream, like, you hear mainstream and you immediately think that that's a bad thing, that anything mainstream is just automatically evil. And it's, I don't know, I've never really agreed with that at all. Oftentimes mainstream means good, where like, yeah, God of War 2018 is mainstream because it's really fucking good. And yeah, you have things that are in the mainstream zeitgeist that are not good, but that's not everything. It's probably not even most things. We wear Nike shoes because Nike makes good shoes. Sure, they're great marketers. Sure, they're great advertisers. Sure, they're great this, that, and the other, but they make great shoes. And that's kind of the forefront. That's kind of the bones of the entire decision every day when we lace up our Nike shoes. It's because they're good shoes, So yeah, I think that's one of the big points here, that I just wish AAA companies would focus back on making good games, and it's not to say they don't, but like, I just wish that would be the focus. Like, sure, mainstream is great, but try to create good mainstream shit. Let's have more God of Wars and fewer Fair Gameses, fewer Concords. Like, that's not the direction of mainstream I want to see PlayStation pushing towards, or EA pushing towards, or any of these companies to push towards. Like, like, Star Wars Jedi Survivor Fallen Order is a absolutely 1000% a mainstream game, as mainstream as it gets, but it's also really fucking good. And so it's like, let's have a little bit of both. Let's have quality and mass market appeal. I think both of those things are great. And I think his idea specifically, and you look at something like a Baldur's Gate or an Elden Ring, of really two titles that very much focus on that idea of making a game for someone opposed to making a game for everyone, and what great success they had with that philosophy. You know, so I think his mindset is kind of perfect for the job that he has and the type of studios that are under his watch. Like, yeah, just I really have no. I listened to the full interview, and pretty much everything he was saying in that damn interview, I was like, fuck yeah, I could not agree more. So shout out to Mr. Sardin over there at PullUP. And yeah, they were talking because they have that Marvel comic invasion game, and they have he was talking about they have a few other licensed games that are in the works that they haven't announced yet, and he said they have like 50 plus titles that are currently in development under just the full portfolio of you know, Focus, Dotemu, and just you know, his entire kind of games umbrella under PullUP, the different subsidiaries of PullUP. So yeah, they got a lot on the way, and with that kind of mindset, it makes me very optimistic for their future. And I just love Focus in general. You know, I like Focus in terms of focusing on something, but I also like Focus in terms of focus home. They just, you know, talking about those, the Banishers and the Vampires and the Plague Tales, and I just really love a lot of the games that they put out. So, yeah, I'm pumped to see that they're having success over there. And next up here, it's we got some Capcom sales data. This is fucking wild. So Capcom just updated the sales figures for some of their big and beloved franchises and just individual titles within these franchises. Resident Evil 4, and keep in mind these are just the remakes for Resident Evil. This is not including the originals. Resident Evil 4 Remake is at 10.62 million copies sold. RE Village is over 12 million copies sold. RE7 is over 15 million copies sold. RE2 is close to 16 million copies sold. Devil May Cry 5 is over 10 million copies sold. DMC HD Collection is it's close to 3 million copies sold. DMC 4 Special Edition close to 4 million copies sold. Street Fighter 6 over 5 million sold. Monster Hunter Wilds already over 10 million sold. Monster Hunter Rise at 17 million sold. Single player games, they don't sell. We got to focus all our energy and effort on live service games. Single player games do not sell. And you see damn near annual releases of Resident Evil all selling over 10 million copies. You know, RE2 close to 16 million copies sold for a 7-hour, extremely linear fucking third-person shooter. RE7, 15.42 million copies sold for a 6.5-hour first-person horror game. It's like, it is wild. It's just so wild. Resident Evil sells so damn well, man. I know that in my... Like, I have that information in my brain where it's like, yeah, this is a popular franchise. But sometimes I need to see it kind of laid out to realize how damn popular that franchise actually is. And then, of course, Devil May Cry getting that huge bump from the Netflix show. You got to assume that right now Capcom has to be looking at the next project from the DMC, you know, in the DMC universe, DMC 6 or a spinoff or wherever they're going to go with that franchise. You would have to imagine that's got to be right around the corner. Yeah, and you know RE9 is going to sell like absolute hotcakes when it comes out early February 2026, I believe. So they're crushing it. And then, of course, Monster Hunter Rise, it's fucking almost 18 million copies sold. Wilds over 10 million in just a few months. I mean, Monster Hunter is their big dog. They're real big dog franchise, and they just announced a new one in that space that we'll talk about in a second here. But single player games, they don't sell well. Capcom consistently dropping the ball. Can't you see? Can't you see Capcom just keeps dropping the ball? They're continually giving pay raises to their employees and, selling tens of millions of copies for their single player franchises. And it's probably time for them to make a Fair Games, right? We need Capcom's Concord. Which I guess they did have Exoprimal. But it's like they're smart with it. They get a Game Pass bag for that and they call it a day. Let's see here. Sony partnered with Virtous. So this is actually, to be really clear, I just saw this when I was scrolling Twitter today, and I just saw the partnership pop up, and they were on stage presenting something. To be completely honest, I haven't looked too much into this one, so take all of this with a grain of salt. But I was like, oh damn, that's fucking cool. So I just jotted it down real quick just to kind of throw out some ideas with you all, shoot the shit a little bit, because Virtuous is the maker of, obviously Metal Gear Solid 3 Delta that's releasing in just a couple weeks. They released Oblivion, the remake to, Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion. And so they are lining them up and knocking them down in the remake wing. They're getting a lot of W's on the board with their remakes, and assuming that Metal Gear Solid 3 is good, I think it will be. But they're kind of crushing these remakes. And I know Oblivion had some problems with bugs and shit like that, but so does every Elder Scrolls game ever, so I guess that's right in the wheelhouse there. But it's, I just started thinking, I was like, okay, PlayStation, what exactly in their portfolio, what exactly under their label would be a great target for a remake? I start kind of going through the Rolodex in my brain. I'm like, oh shit, fucking Siphon Filter. A Siphon Filter makes all the sense in the world. Where they are about to release MGS3. Is Siphon Filter Metal Gear Solid? Like, that's the whole thing, right? Siphon Filter is essentially PlayStation's first party answer to a Metal Gear Solid. And you can take so much of the bones of what you're doing with that MGS3 remake and swap that into a cool ass Siphon Filter game. I don't, that would be a task for sure, because that's not going to be and listen, it's not easy to get Oblivion remade. It's not easy to get Metal Gear Solid 3 remade, but Siphon Filter, that's for sure going to be, you're going to have to do some heavy lifting to remake, not remaster, because you're going to have to remake Siphon Filter 1. That can't be like a touch up. That'll have to be a full blown remake. But I do think the creator of Siphon Filter is not there any longer with John Garvin. I believe, I don't know if he got fired or he left Sony, but he's not with PlayStation anymore. So they're, theoretically, like, you could have a scenario where, hey, Bend, whatever you're working on, go ahead, launch that as a launch title for the PS6, whatever new IP they're working on. And then if this Siphon Filter remake does really well, then hey, we're gonna put y'all on a reboot probably wouldn't make sense after a remake, but we're gonna put you on a spin-off in the Siphon Filter verse. We're gonna put you on some Siphon Filter related project because the remake just sold 7 million copies, and yeah, we're gonna double down and try to make this into a valuable IP for us again, because that was like one of PS1 original IP that was, I'm not saying a household name, but it was synonymous with PlayStation at the time. And I think there could be some serious upside to Siphon Filter coming back. Just a cool ass espionage spy game. There's just not many, and especially there's not many that I can see having much of a sustainable, or like, you look at Metal Gear, and are they really going to continue making Metal Gear games without Kojima? Probably not. And if they do you think people are going to be overly receptive to them? Probably not. I don't think they're going to get a warm, welcoming fucking embrace by the fandom, unfortunately. And then you look at Splinter Cell, it's like, are we ever going to get that? Probably not. So it's like Siphon Filter kind of could have this entire lane all to itself there. So I think that's an interesting pick. God of War 1 remake, makes a ton of sense. Sly Cooper 1, I think, could make some sense. But that's kind of those three. You can maybe start getting into some Jack and Daxter territory. I don't know if you really want to remake a Twisted Metal more so than reboot a Twisted Metal. I think a rebooted Twisted Metal makes a lot of sense, but I don't think a remake of Twisted Metal makes a lot of sense. And I don't really think a remake of any of your PS3 IP makes sense at all to me. Just port those bad boys. Most of those games still hold up just fine. No need to remake Uncharted. No need to remake Resistance. Maybe you could do a remake to Resistance, and yeah, but I don't know. I think a port would be fine for Infamous, Uncharted, Resistance. And I mean, we already have the Uncharted port, so you don't even need that. But yeah, I don't think most of those PS3 games need remakes whatsoever. So I'm hoping it's not that. I'm hoping we just get simple ports, collection ports, trilogy ports. Fucking, I don't know. 4-game ports, 2-game ports, just an individual game port for a lesser price, whatever it may be. Light touch-ups. That's kind of the most we need with those PS3 games, in my opinion. Alright. You ready to talk about some Nintendo? They had their Partner Direct showcase, which was pretty much just them announcing games that have been out for a while on other platforms. And they're now coming to the Switch. This was a bad show. This was a really bad show. This was... So, just from my standpoint, and that's the only standpoint I can really speak to, is just my fucking anecdotal kind of view of this thing. I go in watching this, and I'm like, I don't own a Switch 2 yet. And I'm watching this waiting for something to tell me why I need to buy a Switch 2. And yeah, you have Donkey Kong, and definitely I do want to buy a Switch 2 for Donkey Kong. No doubt about that. Mario Kart, I'd love to play that. No doubt. But I'm looking, I'm still waiting for that extra convincing point to be made. I'm watching this thing, and I'm like, oh, okay, well that looks cool. Or, oh, that kind of looks cool. And then later I find out that none of these games... Or I shouldn't say none of these games, but none of the games that were appealing to me are Switch 2 exclusive. Which is great. It means I don't have to buy expensive hardware, but I don't know. Shouldn't the point be of these shows, if you're a console manufacturer, to sell the hardware and to get, people into your ecosystem so they can keep buying the games? I don't know. Or maybe the point of this show is to just be like, hey, we already got a fucking huge install base, and we're going to let you know that games that have already been out on other platforms are now going to be available on the platform you own. And that makes a lot of sense as well. So I guess I should just say, for me personally, really underwhelming show, but I definitely get it if you, only play on Nintendo consoles. Having some of these games head over to your system is pretty fucking dope, but... Yeah, I think a full-blown Nintendo Direct, where there's first-party stuff re-revealed and release dates given for, Metroid Prime and all that, I think that will be on the way pretty soon, probably before fall. So we'll probably get a really good Direct before the end of the year. This is just, doing some third-party relationship building and some third-party announcements for their partners. But I'm not really going to talk much about the games that... I don't want to talk about the games that I've already known about and have already been on other platforms and have already been out for a little bit. I want to kind of talk more about the new games that caught my eye. And probably the two big games of this show come from one company, Square Enix, with their doubleheader at the end of the showcase. The first was a new HD 2D Square action RPG of sorts. It's named The Adventures of Elliot, and it's set in Philadelphia. It's set in Philadelphia. I'm just gonna let that one breathe there for a second. Never change, Square. Never change. I thought the game looked cool. I would guess my game of the show would be this game set in Philadelphia, unfortunately. You see some sword combat, some bow combat. You got some cool fucking magical powers in there. You're able to like warp to different locations, and you have this hover ability with your magical fairy. And listen, I think this looked cool. I think the art style looked great. The fairy was annoying as fuck immediately. As soon as she started talking, you're like, holy fuck, man. The loudest, squeakiest voice, like that type of shit. I know for most people this is not a big deal, and I get it. Just speaking for myself, that's the type of shit that will make me not play a game. That's the type of shit that will make me not buy a game. I don't. Is there a way to like, lower the voice? Is there a way to just mute that character altogether and just read the text? The high pitched squeaky voices, I can't fucking do it. Cannot fucking do it. But yeah, the game did look really good. The Adventures of Elliot looked really solid. So, and also I should say there is a demo available now, I believe. So shout out to the Adventures of Elliot. Really looked solid. And then the show closed off with Octopath Zero. So they showed that they have some building in there, like some town building, some house structures that you're creating, but that was about it. They didn't show much at all in this little trailer. It was like, hey, we got some building in here, and Octopath Zero releasing December 4th, 2025. Come build some things with us. But I mean, this is once again appealing to fans of that franchise who kind of already know what they're in for, already know what to expect, and you get a little shot of some turn-based combat in there, I believe. But yeah, I mean, that's a decently, that's a decent kind of ending reveal, I guess. Octopath people who played it seem to really, really love it. So getting that fanfare in at the end of your show, like, yeah, that makes sense. And then you had Monster Hunter Stories 3, not much gameplay or anything shown, but undeniably a big announcement. As we just talked about earlier, Monster Hunter is selling like fucking hotcakes with Capcom. Definitely in recent years has been their best-selling franchise. And so Monster Hunter Stories 3. Also, kind of a big deal with Monster Hunter Stories 3. It's going to be coming day one to Xbox. And kind of right there talking again about the whole idea of, Exoprimal is available on Game Pass. Kinnitsugami is available on Game Pass. And Xbox kind of lending a helping hand for some of their more experimental IP. Kind of that idea of you scratch your back, we scratch, you scratch our back, we scratch your back. That kind of ongoing relationship that you're trying to build there. So now they're getting Monster Hunter Stories for the first time available on an Xbox console. So shout out to Capcom with Monster Hunter Stories 3. And hella, playing as a mouse in this game. Kind of looks like Squirrel with a gun. A third-person view in a 3D kind of, I don't know if it's open world, but definitely open zones. You're kind of just going, fucking around. And listen, I love Squirrel with a gun. I absolutely adored Squirrel with a gun. So if I can play Rat with a rocket, Rat with a... I don't have anything for you today, but if I can play this little fucking game with a mouse and then run around and be a fucking pest, annoy people, and then like I don't know. Squirrel with I don't typically like these style of games, but Squirrel with a Gun totally changed my perspective on that. So hella, I'll be jumping in and playing as a mouse, I guess. Chronos: The New Dawn got a release date for September 5th, which I believe that's new information. I don't think it had an official release date. It looked pretty rough running on the Switch, but it's coming to the Switch, which that in and of itself is pretty fucking impressive, and releasing on September 5th, so right before that holiday kind of fervor begins, which is perfect. You don't want your game to come out on you want it to come out before the festivities begin. You want someone to go in and be able to pick up your game immediately when they're in the spirit for, the spooky season. So smart move there by Chronos and Bloober for getting that out in a timely manner. Cannot fucking wait to play that. And then there's a game all about simulating the campfire experience. And then you can even drag in your friends with their creepy new fucking camera setup, and you can have their heads resting on stools around the campfire. How cozy that must be. Just seeing these dangling fucking heads resting on stools with no bodies attached to them. That's definitely the cozy spirit. Chillin' by the Fire is out now. That's the name of the game, Chillin' by the Fire. I will say, before we jump out of this, just in terms of notable announcements, this is once again not one that is notable for most of us, but notable for Switch owners for sure, is that one of the most popular games in the world is coming to the Switch for the first time with Madden 26. As far as I'm aware, there have not been any other Madden games on Switch hardware before Madden 26, which is really weird because Madden 26 is also the first Madden game that is current gen only, quote unquote, where it's ditching the PS4. But it's like, if you're ditching the PS4, but you're putting it on the Switch 2, why wouldn't you just put it on the PS4 as well if you're already making a Switch 2 version? So, yeah, it's like, how next gen is it? How current gen is it really? But, I mean, that's a fucking mega franchise that's returning to Nintendo, returning to, being available on Nintendo hardware, which is a big deal. So, shout out to the Switch 2 for, being able to run these games natively. And yeah, man, that is about it for the show. I can't say that was really like a super strong showing for any sort of presentation, showcase, direct, any of those style of events. Like, one of the worst ones from this year for sure. It's not on the higher quality end of showcases that we've seen this year, but at the same time, like, I kind of give them a little bit of a pass because they have these more frequently than most. Like, you get directs a little bit more frequently, then you get state of plays, and like, you have one Xbox showcase a year and then a developer direct in January, but that's kind of it. They have a little bit of an appearance at Gamescom, but not really. Not in terms of like big showcases that you have to tune in for. So I give Nintendo a little bit more of a pass here, but I mean, undeniably not a good show, right? So yeah, I guess ending the ramble today on a slightly sour note with a little bit of a stinker for a showcase, if we're being honest. But hey, is what it is. You can't win them all. I think that by the end of the year they'll be back with a banger of a direct, I would assume. So I'll be staying tuned. I'm still wanting to, like, I want to pick up a Switch 2, and I'm just waiting. Like, I want a couple more things. Just a couple more things. Ultimate Alliance 4, I've talked about this 100 times. A Deadly Premonition, a new Deadly Premonition, a new Bayonetta. Just something that's like, oh, okay, here we go. Now we're in business. Something that's a little bit more appealing to me personally. But even then, like, Donkey Kong alone, like, yeah, that's a system seller. So can't complain too much. They're doing great shit over there. And yeah, we'll see how they wrap up the rest of the year. But that said, let's wrap up this show. I appreciate you all for tuning in so very much. If you like the content, please consider giving it a like. If you're new, please consider subscribing. Drop a comment down for the algorithm to kick this out to some new eyeballs, to get some new people in the door. And yeah, shoot the shit with me. Let me know if you think I'm crazy about my overall score for that Nintendo show. I mean, it's low, right? Like, it's got to be D- range. Something like that. You got a couple good announcements, and there was only 25 minutes. It didn't take up too much of your time, but not a good show. So let me know what your grade was for the Nintendo Direct overall. And like I said, not going to go through everything because it's most of that shit, y'all. It's not like I've cultivated a Nintendo fan base here of people who only play on Nintendo. So most of y'all have already either played those games or at least know those games are available on the platform that you already own. So no need to kind of go over those again. But yeah, that's the show for today, guys. Appreciate y'all so much, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.